Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Higher or Lower, brought to you by Spreadex and oddschecker. This is the first weekend of the Premier League preview game week 1. I'm your host Elek, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Worth from WhoScored and Jack Wright, expert tipster, as we look ahead to these opening games. Now this is Higher or Lower, where we take the midpoint of the spread with Spreadex and say if we think it'll be higher, which would be a buy bet, or lower, which would be a sell. We're not going to go kind of heavily into what spread betting means, but you can find an explainer up on the Spreadex site as well, so make sure you go and check that out. But kicking off with the first game of the Premier League.
Here we are.
Can't wait.
It's back. Football obviously came back last weekend, but Premier League football specifically is back now. And Burnley Man City, a game full of narrative. Vincent Kompany, this is another audition, I guess, for the top job at some point. He had an audition last season. Got well beaten in the cup. But
that fixtureless computer is crazy, isn't it?
I know, it is. Who could have predicted that this would be the opener? So the first market we're going to be looking to cover in this week's Higher or Lower in Burnley, Manchester City, a cracking game to kick off the Premier League season on Friday night. Erling Haaland player goal minutes. Now this is a market where you take the time that a goal is scored. So if Haaland scores in the 25th minute, and then he comes off after 70 minutes, then that would settle at 24 minutes. If he were to score in the 24th minute and the 26th minute, you see I've given myself some easy maths there, that would add up to 50 and it would settle at 50. So it's the accumulative minutes that they score in. And the midpoint here is 51. The spread is 49 to sell, 53 to buy. What are we doing, lads? 3, 2, 1. Oh.
Okay.
Dan going higher. Dan, I said your name will come to you first.
Right, let's do it. Where's Haaland?
Fine, move on. Right.
That's my rationale completed.
Yeah.
I just think he's going to come flying out of the trap. He scored 2 goals on the first day last season against West Ham, and those goal minutes would have made up more than 51. So that's the second bit. I just think, as much as the narrative that you mentioned is set, Man City are just going to cause all sorts of trouble for Burnley, and Kompany's not going to have a great start to his time in the Premier League, and Haaland is probably going to be the main inflictor of the pain, I would have thought.
The main inflictor.
Wow,
Dan,
the
what do you reckon?
inflictor.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you know the combined minutes for Haaland's goals against the newly promoted sides away from home last season?
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay. Nottingham Forest did not score.
Oh.
Bournemouth, he did score,
There we go.
29th minute.
Okay.
Fulham, he did score. So he scored against 2 out of the 3 on the road in the 3rd minute.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there we go. 17 appearances last season, away from home, 14 goals, scored in 11 of those games, higher than the line we've got here in 6, lower in 11. Total minutes, 686, average 40 minutes across the season away from home.
Also, I think given that City are heavy favourites for this game, and unsurprisingly so, the supremacy is 1.55 to sell, 1.75 to buy, so they're nearly 2 goal favourites here. 1.5 goal favourites at least. There's a fair chance, I think, that Haaland doesn't play 90 minutes. I would have his minutes played at probably somewhere between 70, 75 as a spread. So as such, if he doesn't score and he's getting, he got taken off in the Community Shield after 64 minutes, they've got loads of options to come off the bench. Zero has to be a big runner here, and even then, if he does score in the first half, he still might come off after 70, in which case you're not going to risk getting the those pretty damaging late goals. So.
Yeah, I agree, and I think obviously he's going to be a target for Kompany and the defenders there. That's my opinion, but we'll see. We'll soon find out tomorrow night.
We're going to find out very soon. Right now, first Man City goal minutes, so same game. The midpoint here is 40. So this is, if you buy, obviously you're saying City will score later than 40 minutes. If you sell, it's going to be an early goal. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, all of us lower. All of us fancy an early goal here, Jack.
Do we? Oh, yes, we do. Yeah.
I think otherwise.
Yeah. Well,
do you get the game?
Yeah. Well, they might not score at all. Is what I was getting at.
Oh,
throw that one in.
That is always,
there. That is a chance, isn't it? Yeah, I think looking at their performances last season and say against the newly promoted sides, that you expect them to get a win. You expect them to get off to a flying start and kind of probably try and put the game to bed as soon as possible. So as much as Vincent Kompany, and we want to quieten that crowd down because you obviously Turf Moor, everyone's happy place, isn't it? They want to make sure that they get it done early, get the job done, keep them quiet.
Yep, I agree. And obviously the three of us have gone lower. Twitter verse agrees with us. 80% of our Twitter followers that have taken part in the polls agree that there will be a City goal before the 40th minute. And yeah, I mean, why wouldn't there be? This is Man City we're talking about.
They did score in the first half against all three of the newly promoted sides last season.
Yeah.
Albeit the Forest one was 41 minutes, but you're there or thereabouts.
There we go.
15 and 3 were against Bournemouth and Fulham.
Yeah, and City have been winning at half time in all of their last 8 against Burnley. So yeah, obviously there's a few minutes there where you might still have a losing bet, but I can't see that happening.
Yeah,
I really can't.
I also think the key here is the way that Burnley will set up and play. Like, I just don't think there's any chance that they're going to turn up and try and sit in a low block and try and frustrate City. They're going to play their own game. They're going to try and take the game to City. I think there could be loads of goals in this one, generally, because of the way that Burnley played. Their defensive record last season was very good, but obviously this is a pretty different task. And we saw, as I said, City steamroller them last season. So we're all going lower than 40 there. So early City goals, but no late Haaland goals, if that makes sense. On then to Arsenal against Nottingham Forest. Arsenal obviously had a superb season last season. Forest just about staying up in the end after looking doomed after a few weeks of the season. Here we've got the Arsenal supremacy, which is 2.15. So this is the amount of goals Arsenal will beat Forest by. 2.15, higher or lower. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, all of us lower.
Oh, wow.
There we go.
I'm actually quite surprised by that.
Okay, well, you can tell us why.
I don't know why I should be. We've all agreed. I think the general consensus, I think possibly that people are going to think back to last season and that Arsenal performance against Forest, for those that can't remember, was 5-0. Obviously, if that's the case, then that was their best win at home in the season, or joint best anyway, match against Wolves. But across the season, they kind of got the job done rather than absolutely steamroll sides at the Emirates. And I feel that could well be the case here again against Forest, that will look to try and frustrate them, look to try and kind of get a foothold in the game. Saying they'll obviously look to be doing a lot better job of that than they did last season.
I think if you look back at the last 6 games, it's 3 wins apiece between these two teams, which suggests that it is going to be a lot closer than the 2.15 margin. But the main reason I've gone lower is because I think Arsenal win by 2. So it's a very small...
Right, specific reason.
This is a very small lower, but if it happens, it'll be profit nonetheless.
Yeah, I kind of hate buying supremacies at high lines. Like, I think often the narrative can be so focused on the fact that Arsenal are definitely going to win, you kind of forget the fact that there is like a possibility here of a negative makeup if Forest do shock Arsenal. You know, we saw Arsenal beaten a couple of years ago by Brentford on opening day. This obviously a very different Arsenal team, but at the same time, you know, we even though I've got Arsenal in second in my Premier League predicted table, I feel like we are basing this all on one season and one very unexpected season as well, and there could be I'd just be a little bit wary of getting too financially involved with Arsenal until we see them replicate that level of performance again over the first few games of the season.
I did crunch some numbers on it. The average supremacy for Arsenal across last season, and as you rightly said, was a better season than we expected them to have, was actually 1.47. So it wasn't that high. Yeah. And they only won by 3 or more goals on 5 occasions, so 26% of their home games. Obviously, Forest was 1. That's probably the one thing that you'd be a little bit concerned about. But I'd say that we're on the right side of it, given the line. Yeah,
as you say, the goal difference last season for Arsenal was 45 from 38 games, so averaging kind of just over 1 a game over the course of the campaign. Yeah. In the same vein, though, we've got total goal minutes here. This is obviously the cumulative total minutes the goals are scored within the game. The midpoint here is 178, higher or lower. 3, 2, 1. Higher, both of you. I'll go first then. I said lower. I just, when you've got a game like this where it's a heavy favourite against, a team who maybe aren't expected to cause too many issues, I think the likelihood more than ever is that the game might kind of fall away a bit towards the end. I think if Arsenal do justify favouritism and they're a couple of goals ahead, later on in the game, you'll see players like Saka come off and be rested, and it's just it's a really high line. I mean, the goal line is very high as well, so it's unsurprising. But I think an average total goal minutes line is about the 135, 140 mark. So it's you're basically backing like a heavy odds on shot by buying this, which isn't really my style. And I'd like to have the 1-0 win, the 0 on my side. Yeah. To play a little bit devil's advocate to that one. So you should. You said something else. Is that
I was going to use what you've said there as an argument to justify what I said, to be honest, in the fact that if they are cruising 2-3-0 up towards the end of the game, then we could see those fringe players coming on and with a point to prove rather than just kind of cruise over the line. And of course, we have got the famous, I don't know if you've heard about it, but there's quite a lot of injury time happening.
Yeah, there is.
I don't know if that's been documented. We could see that.
Do we know that that's going to be the case in the Premier League?
We don't yet. That's the exciting thing.
Is the angle actually, there's the assumption that's going to be there, short, go lower, because maybe it's just going to be 2 at half time, 4 at full time, like every other time.
Okay, I'm going to come back at you and say Arsenal scored 15 goals in the last 15 minutes of games last season, which was the 3rd highest in the Premier League.
Yeah, can't last.
Only Tottenham and Newcastle scored more than that. And who conceded the most goals in the last 15 minutes?
It's got to be Nottingham Forest.
Oh, it is. Nottingham Forest, yeah. 17 goals conceded in the last 15 minutes of the games.
Fair enough. Dan?
I don't know if there's much to add to that, to be honest. I guess we could look at some of the fixtures from the last few years. We've obviously talked about 2 5-0s.
Yeah.
We've got a 4-2 and a 4-0, so there are goals in this fixture. That said, we've just said that Arsenal won't win by more than 2.15. So
yeah,
it's
I was going to say, both of you saying like you're anticipating like what?
This
like
3-2 is going to be a cracker.
Yeah.
This 3-2 is going to be a cracker.
Your golden middle is very small. Okay, that's the first 2 games. Now looking ahead to Newcastle, Aston Villa, the 2 disruptors, I guess, at the moment. 2 sets of fans who think they can really go put themselves in amongst the fabled Big Six. It's not a Big Six anymore, it's about a Big 9. Newcastle, Villa. But we're looking at corners here. You can see the corners line there. What are we thinking here? Higher or lower? 3, 2, 1. I'm going lower, you guys going higher.
Yeah.
Jack, I know you've got some good stats here, particularly on Newcastle corners.
Yeah, Newcastle are the ones that I'd like to play the team line. Obviously, we've got the totals that you can play as well. They'll play a part of that. Villa weren't that impressive as far as the corners last season, so I'd definitely be edging towards the Newcastle specific line, especially at home, especially against a tough opponent, which will mean that they're generally going to be attacking for large parts of the game. But they actually topped the averages, Newcastle, for corners and totals, obviously, as a result of the full season being completed in home and away games last season, and therefore overall, funnily enough. But 155 corners at home, averaged 8.16 to give people a rough idea of the lines that we should be looking at. 115 in away games at 6.05, so 270 in total, which was an average just over 7 per game. And their home games averaged a total of 11.16, which is the 3rd highest in the Premier League as well. So for total corners, so those are the lines that I'd be looking at for this game.
Yeah, Dan, what do you reckon?
My script says exactly the same as that. Cool. The only thing I think you missed off, which you sort of did mention, but they had 30 more corners than any other side last season.
Wow!
So that is quite significant. And I mean that alone is making me put the higher paddle up. Both of these teams are super interesting this season, and I think this is a game that could sort of set the standard for both of their seasons. I think everyone's kind of got them head to head throughout the whole season, and where you always love to get a big win over, not necessarily rivals, but you kind of get what I'm saying, that those 2 are going to be going head to head.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure. I've only gone lower because I just always am wary when you're getting markets priced up off last season's data, when actually there's a fair bit of squad churn. I know they're the same managers at the back end of the season, but I just wonder if it might be a little bit high because it's based on Newcastle's ridiculous numbers from last season. But we'll soon find out.
We will.
Brentford against Spurs now, an all-London clash. Looking at total goal minutes here, Ange Postecoglou's first game, or first Premier League game, I should say, in charge of Tottenham. The midpoint is 150. Are we going higher or lower? 3, 2, 1. Yes, all of us agreed.
All in.
Dan, is this because of Ange?
A little bit of that.
Yeah.
Again, it's just looking back at last season. I think we had 3-1 and 2-2. So there's plenty of goals in the fixture. I imagine that will continue here. I think for Brentford, there is, although Ange is in place, I don't think there's that much to be scared of from a Brentford point of view. So I think they will go for it.
Definitely.
Get the season off to a flyer. And despite Tony being out, I still think Brentford can get on the score sheet at least once, hopefully twice for this total. Viso and Mbeumo going to hit the ground running, and they're going to chase down that 150.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Do we expect Harry Kane to be there for this one?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I
That would
expect
help,
him to,
wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would help.
Big
I
time.
do expect him to get on
Yeah,
the score sheet as well. Yeah.
Talk that if he's there on the weekend, then he's going to be there at least till January, isn't it? So
Yeah.
time's ticking.
It is. Yeah. I think. I think he'll want to commit himself there and so break some more records, won't he? So, but yeah, this one does think of goals. Very close set last season. You rightly say there was 4 goals in both. 208 minutes in the game at Spurs was the total. 205 minutes was the total in the game at Brentford. It's quite interesting that these sides also tend to feature goals in their games in the back end of games. There's only 3 goals in the opening 15 minutes of Brentford games last season at home, and they didn't concede any. So quite a heavy split as far as second half goals for both these sides. 29 in the second half in Brentford games as opposed to 14 at home in the first half. 44 second half goals in Spurs away games last season. So high numbers, 27, a lot of those come in late on. So we should see some high numbers. Like I said, we saw some late goals in both games last season. So.
Yeah, I mean, with me, it's mainly based on the Spurs manager, who we know is going to employ this just ridiculously attacking style of play. Celtic became kind of must viewing over the last couple of seasons because for a neutral, just watching the way they play football was really entertaining. I don't pay too much attention to pre-season stuff, but I think we've seen in pre-season that is the way they're going to set out to play in these games, and especially away from home, where Brentford is so strong at home, you anticipate that should make it a really open one.
Do you expect it to land for Spurs early under Ange? Do you think he's going to?
I think there will be glimpses of some real quality. I think if Kane stays, they're probably being written off a bit early again because no Europe, I think, is going to be important later on in the campaign. It's exactly a year ago, if we were sitting here, Spurs were third favourites to win the Premier League title, and the squad is basically exactly the same with a couple of additions. Like, to drop off under a manager in Conte who has a record of having these pronounced drop-offs at the end of his cycles. Sadly, Spurs didn't get to enjoy the highs either, for very long at least. I think they'll be okay, but it might take a bit of time. I'm really excited to see them, and I do think for this game to be 30 points lower than the total goal minutes in Arsenal Forest just seems like a bit of a strange one, given that we know the attacking mentality of one of the sides. Yeah,
this does seem like a good game for the first glimpse of.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah,
definitely against a Brentford side who can kind of do it both ways. They can be compact, they can press. I'll be interested to see how they set up for this one without Tony, especially. 2 more games we're going to preview into the big game on Sunday. Really intriguing clash, this one. Chelsea, for the first time under Maurizio Pochettino, with basically another whole new team for the third time in 3 windows. And Liverpool, who, again, new look. A lot of the old guard have moved on. No Milner, no Henderson, no Fabinho. But Jurgen Klopp has brought in some exciting players here as well. This is total goals. The midpoint is 3. We're going higher or lower. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, wow.
So this is my strongest of the lot, I think.
Yeah.
I just can't understand why this line is low. Basically, where you've got a Chelsea team who I think in Pochettino have a manager that I really like, but like the amount of inexperience running through this side, except for Thiago Silva, and the fact that they haven't played together in any competitive games basically at all, suggests to me that I don't really see why they would have good, why the defensive shape should be adept enough to stop the barrage that's going to come their way from Darwin Núñez, from Luis Diaz, from Cody Gakpo, from Mo Salah, from it's just the list is, and even in midfield, because Liverpool haven't been able to bring in the 6 they want to, and there's now talk that maybe Romeo Lavia will be sitting behind the bench at Chelsea rather than at Liverpool at Stamford Bridge, with talk that Chelsea trying to gazump that deal. Their midfield 3 could be Curtis Jones, who I love, but like playing as a 6, and Szoboszlai and McAllister, like it's incredibly attacking. Where again, Chelsea certainly have the attacking threat in my mind that they should be able to capitalise on that. 2 managers again who definitely focus on the attacking side of the game. I think a really big clash and a really big opportunity for both of them to kind of right some of the wrongs of last season. I know the game finished, when was it, March or February, finished 0-0, and it was one of the worst games in Premier League history where like nothing really happened. But I don't really see why that should follow suit here. I'm a big buyer here. The buy line is 3.1, the sell's 2.9.
Yeah.
Dan?
For someone that doesn't like buying a high line, you're buying a high line.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't feel high to me.
Yeah. I guess it's always,
what do you reckon?
Well, you are very confident, but I still disagree with you.
Fine.
Oh.
I think a lot of your big points there are on the new guys coming in and
Yeah.
how great they are going forward, but it's the first competitive game.
Or it's about the new defenders coming in and how
And
bad they are.
Right, okay. I think there's just so much still to be seen.
Yeah.
First game, there's always going to be kind of nerves and things like that, trying to make a point to their new fans. And I think it's just going to be a stalemate again. The last 4 have been 0-0 between these two sides. And in all competitions, obviously.
Yeah.
You've got a couple of finals in there that were settled on penalties.
Yeah, finals, you can't, finals are always bad games.
Yeah. But first day of the Premier League must feel like a final.
This is the opposite of a final. It's the opening. It's the beginning.
Round 1.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, you've kind of got me there a little bit. I'm staying strong though. I'm still lower.
Right.
Drawing the last 6, which obviously doesn't mean that there won't be no goals, but with 4 of them being 0-0, you'd think that it'll be very tight, a bit tetchy, and I would even maybe go as far as to say there'll be no goals.
But so look, you say, so how many, was it 4 of the last, how many have been 0-0?
6.
So in my weird way of thinking about things, like the average the average amount of goals in the game will be around about what, like 2.4 over a course of time. Maybe in the Premier League, maybe a little bit higher. So if you've had 4 games in the last 6 that have been 0-0, and if you take the chunk of like 50 games between Chelsea and Liverpool with that within it, eventually it's going to even itself out over time. Like, because historical data cannot just continue to replicate. You won't find a game where the goal line is that low. So it's kind of half gambler's fallacy, half law of averages. We'll let the viewer decide which one it is. But like, there isn't any basis within the history in my mind to suggest that the 0-0s will track. There probably isn't any basis in the history of the 0-0 success that's going to go higher either. But there has to be some kind of variance in time, and I think there's enough reason here to think it might be here. What do you reckon? Well, I know what you reckon.
Well, I went lower.
You agree with Dan?
Yeah, do you know what? It was a tough arm-twisted low, I'll be honest, because I want this to be a good game as much as anything.
Exactly, yeah.
And it kind of, you look at it and think, obviously I talked Liverpool up last week saying they're going to be goal frenzies and all the rest of it, and then I'm going to go and say, well, they're going to start with a 1-0 win, keep it tight, so on and so forth. But there weren't, even despite Chelsea's horrific season last season, they didn't have many goals at Stamford Bridge at all. So going along that route, and also, like you said, that this is an important game for both sides to set a bit of a marker, and I feel that it will be a little bit tight. An early goal changes that, of course.
Yeah.
But without that knowledge, I'm gonna go. Given the line, officially to buy, I'd have to go 3.1. So I'm needing 4 goals to make it a profitable one. I'm prepared to take the chance. Not my strongest selection, but take the chance to go lower.
Right, you guys have mistakenly gone lower. I've said higher. So that's Chelsea Liverpool.
See you next week.
Finally, no, we've got one more in this round, I'm afraid. Finally, in part 1, it is Monday Night Football, the Monday Night Football. Manchester United hosting Gary O'Neill's Wolves. Bit of turbulence behind the scenes at Wolves. The total goal line is what we're doing here as well, 3.1, so pretty much the same midpoint as the Chelsea Liverpool game. Higher or lower, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, it's just me.
Justify yourself.
Well, I think I'm basing it on what you just said about Wolves, that they're in absolute turmoil. I just can't see how they can do anything but get hammered here, really. And I think United, although not the best pre-season, I think they'll be...
matter.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter at all. They'll be ready and raring to go, and are really going to put Wolves to the sword here. United were beaten at home last season, but the season before that they put 5 past Leeds, and I feel like this has got a similar feel to it, where United can come out of the blocks quick. Maybe not stick 5 past them, but 2, 3, 4 is well within the realms of possibility, I think.
Chat?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree. I just think Man United are just going to get the job done. This to me, he's got 2-0 written all over it. It was saying
That's
was the
what
score.
happened in about 3 games ago for us, wasn't it?
Yeah.
End of May.
It was, yeah.
Middle of May.
And it kind of, and that's the very much a long-standing history. We then talk about history, but the long-standing history in this game is Man United score a couple and Wolves don't score any effectively. And we know Man United league high clean sheets last season, so I can't see Wolves scoring. That's for certain. So I'm then asking myself, are Man United going to be scoring 4 plus? And that's it. I think a 2-goal win here, 2-0. But Gary Neal's going to try and set them up tight, Wolves.
Yeah.
They haven't got really anything going forward. They do look a shambles. To say that there's turbulence behind the scenes, a bit like saying going on the Titanic, it's a little bit choppy up ahead. But yeah, I said they were ranked away from home last season. Wolves were ranked pretty much all over the place, and that was with Lopetegui. And is it Gary O'Neill an upgrade on that? I think we can all agree that that's a lower. For sure. Yeah. So yeah, for me, big losses for the playing staff at Wolves. Only 12 away goals away from home last season. Failed to score in 9 of them. It all points towards them struggling and United just having a cosy win to start the season.
Yeah, I really worry about Wolves going forward. Last season they only scored 3 or more goals once, and that was in a 3-0 home win against Liverpool, and that's in all competitions all of last season. They've only scored 1 goal, I think, their last 5 games in all competitions last season as well. Like, I find it very difficult to be able to buy a kind of 3.1. I think if you think that United are going to hammer them, I'd be much keener to play the supremacy rather than the goal line here, because under Ten Hag, United so solid last season, and they just don't have a striker. Like, I just don't understand where the goal's going to come from. Like, Cunha is obviously a decent player, but he hasn't got any goal record really in his whole career history. Scored 2, I think, wasn't it, last season?
2 and 17 on loan. Yeah, 50 million. I think they bought him for.
Yeah, the supremacy is 1.7, and if like us, you think that Wolves aren't going to score, then it's kind of the same bet, isn't it, really? So
that wasn't the question, though.
No, it wasn't.
Because I do agree, I'd probably rather play that, but that wasn't the question.
1.7, higher or lower? Yeah, fine. Okay, so I'm also a seller there, or going lower. Now it's time for part 2 of Higher or Lower, where we play a bit of a game. And this is where I give some spreads, some midpoints to the guys, and they have to say higher or lower. If they get a question wrong, they are out. This week, it's more before or after rather than higher or lower, because we're looking at first team goals scored. So I spoke about this market earlier. First City goal scored, which we're going to start with. The midpoint is 39. If you're going lower, then you would think that it's going to be a goal scored before that. So you're siding with that team. Higher, you're getting against them, thinking they won't score until later. So, City v Burnley is the first one. Second game is Bournemouth's first goal scored against West Ham. 3, 2, 1. Higher, both correct. Yes. 54th minute is the next one there. Bournemouth versus West Ham. Up next, we have got Sheffield United, their first goal against Crystal Palace. Dan, it's absolutely
I'm bamboozled.
No pressure.
Right, come on.
3, 2, 1. Both correct. Yeah, that is
the
58th minute. Sheffield United's first goal against Crystal Palace.
Flying.
Next, we'll go to East London. West Ham against Bournemouth. West Ham's first goal against Bournemouth on opening day. 3, 2, 1. Yes, guys, you're good at this.
Come on.
Wow, so he's smashing it.
Yeah, flying.
53rd minute. Okay, Chelsea at Stamford Bridge hosting Liverpool.
Ooh.
Chelsea's first goal against Liverpool.
What was the other one?
53 was West Ham Bournemouth. Chelsea's first goal against Liverpool.
This is going to be tight, isn't it?
First goal of the Maurizio Pochettino era on their way to global domination. 3, 2, 1. Someone has won and someone has lost. I'm afraid Dan has lost again.
Oh my goodness.
0 from 3. Jack correct in the 52nd minute.
I like this game.
I know, I bet you do. I bet you do.
It was good you were both like, you both didn't know because there's only 1 minute below.
Yeah,
I
thought so.
Trick question almost.
I turned the screw. Okay, Jack, let's keep playing until you're out. Everton against Fulham. 3, 2, 1. Incorrect. 51.
Oh, my habit of this.
Yeah, you always seem to just bow out.
I do, yeah. I do enough.
You just do enough.
I do enough.
You're always winning by a head.
I do enough, yeah.
Right, so there you go. Everton, 51st minute. Lots of others in there as well. Tottenham's first goal against Brentford, 50th minute. Liverpool's first goal against Chelsea, 49th. Wolves' first goal against United, 66th minute. What we said earlier, that could be a buy, given what we've been saying. So there you go on the Monday Night Football. But thank you very much to the guys for showing their tips and insight. You can find all those markets and plenty of others up on the Spreadex site across the Premier League this weekend. Loads up there, so do make sure you go and check it out and sign up if you haven't already got an account. But do remember that losses can exceed your initial deposit. Make sure you also subscribe to the oddschecker YouTube channel, where you can find loads of other preview content and episodes of Higher or Lower coming up. We also did 2 good episodes last week, doing team points in the Premier League this season and season player goals as well. So loads of kind of season-long preview content up on there, and loads more to come, because next week we'll be back to look over our selections this time around and also looking ahead to game week 2 of the Premier League campaign. So enjoy the football. Thanks to these guys. We'll be back then. Have a look at Spreadex. Check out oddschecker for all of your betting needs elsewhere. And make sure you're gambling responsibly. Enjoy the first weekend of the season in 23-24 in the Premier League.